Alrighty, I am pleased to be joined by Chris McLean from the Turn a Pair Baseball Podcast. How's it going, Chris?
JJ, it's great, man. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to hang out with you and talk baseball.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I understood, I don't know, it was kind of late notice, but thanks again for coming on. And of course, it's been an interesting postseason, not as crazy as it was last year. But before we start talking about that, and before the big news up today, which is Thursday at the time of this recording, or Thursday night, if you want to talk more about your podcast, how we can get it, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so the podcast is, as you mentioned, the Turn a Pair Baseball Podcast. You can find it on Apple. You can find it on Spotify, Amazon, just about anywhere you can find podcasts, you'll find my podcast. I've done about 125 episodes, and each episode is unique in that I interview a major league or a minor league baseball player. Occasionally, we've had broadcasters like the Orioles, a play-by-play broadcaster, Melanie Newman, but really, it's primarily ball players, and I love the human side of the game of baseball. So we don't talk a whole lot about spin rate and statistics and things like that. We do a little bit, but we mainly talk about each guy's or woman's journey from, really when they first sort of were introduced to the game of baseball all the way up until the moment that we interview them. And, a lot of these players they're incredible athletes, but they've had to go through quite a bit to get where they are. And so the story is always in the struggle. And we talk quite a bit about that and sort of the mental headspace that they're in while they're struggling. And so I think it's, for me, oftentimes very therapeutic to hear that and to kind of talk through some of my own, interesting stories as well. But that's it, man. We talk to baseball players and we learn about them as human beings.
Yeah, it's cool, and it's really interesting how you can you can interview both broadcasters and players. And yeah, when you talk about all like the spin rate and velocity, we don't really talk much about that either. That just kind of, I feel like, makes the game more confusing. Yeah. And at times, I feel like there's room for that at times, but I feel like if you go overboard with it, not many people are going to actually want to pay attention. Some people are, but I think if you go overboard with it, it kind of gets old. But again, thanks for coming on. So first, the big news of the day before we start talking about the postseason is, of course, Mike Shildt getting let go by the Cardinals. I was stunned. I thought he was actually going to get extended, what all the reports were saying. But what did you think about the Cardinals letting go of Mike Shildt? Excuse me.
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, he's been a part of the franchise for quite a while. I personally have thought that he's done a nice job. I was really shocked to see that. And the Cardinals, I think, have been, I don't know, they seem to be patient, but there's a reason why they let go of him. And I think we'll probably find that out in the coming days. But, it's possible that he may not have played into how they want him to lead the team philosophically. And that's generally what happens when you have a guy that has a successful season. I would consider what the Cardinals did to be a successful season. It's unfortunate that they had to play the Dodgers in the first round, who, won 105 games, and that was their wild card game. But yeah, I mean, I was surprised, and I'm curious to see what direction they go from here.
Yeah, I was stunned as well, and I thought they were just going to extend him, and I thought he did a pretty good job as well. I mean, technically he was there for 3.5 years, but more just like 3 full seasons. He made the playoffs in each time. And going from the reports, it was basically they had a difference, really. They had a difference of what they want to do. I think that was the whole reason. But I don't know if it's a great decision. We'll find out next year. If the Cardinals don't make the playoffs or they struggle, I feel like it's going to really look bad on the Cardinals president, John. It's going to be a bad look for the Cardinals. But to be honest with you, I just think it was a bad look because Mike Shildt was a very good manager, I thought, and he did a pretty good job with the Cardinals, especially when they had that we're not doing great, and they had that 17-game winning streak. And I know there's been reports that said Skip Schumacher could actually be the next manager, or Oliver it's one of their bench coaches, I think, was the other job. And then there was another guy too, but I just don't think it's a good look for the Cardinals because I think they should have just kept Mike Shildt because I thought the way they were going I thought they did pretty good this year despite getting beat by the Dodgers, but I guess we'll see. Who do you think the Cardinals should hire as their next manager?
I don't know. Skip Schumacher's kind of an interesting name. I know he's highly thought of in many circles around the game, but I'll tell you what I miss, or what I will miss about Mike Shildt is that guy, man, he would put an absolute working on a piece of gum. The way he the thing that I always notice about him, and I can't not look at, is the way he chews the gum. It's like I've never seen anyone chew gum like him. He attacks it. It's so weird. Like his jaw moves in a way I've never seen a human's jaw move. So I'll tell you this: if you're listening or you're watching this and you have no idea what I'm talking about, go and find. I'm sure you can find a YouTube clip of Mike Shildt chewing gum. It's different the way he does it. He's like it's like his lower jaw moves like back and in, back and out, back and out. It's not up and down. It's so interesting. And I would just stare at him and think, man, how does he chew gum like that? I've tried to reenact it and I just can't do it. So that's my breakdown of Mike Shildt right there for you. Real hardcore baseball analysis on the way he chews his gum.
The way that I don't know, Mike Shildt seemed like a pretty laid back manager.
Yeah.
And he seemed like he was pretty easy to get along with. I know Harrison Bader really liked him as a manager, and it seemed like he did a nice job toward the end of the year. So I don't know, Mike Shildt, I don't know. I feel like he's gonna get hired very soon as a manager. I mean, there's only 2 other openings, so I don't know if he'll get hired by the Mets or Padres, but I mean the Padres probably wouldn't. That would be a nice hire for them, especially with what happened to them last season. But I mean, I just think that Mike Shildt's going to get a job very soon here, and the story is interesting too because he never played baseball he never went to the majors. He was hired by the Cardinals back in 2004 as a scout, and then he just kind of worked his way up. So it was a really cool story. I kind of hate to see the way it ended, but I don't know. We'll see what happens next year, and I just got a feeling that someone's going to hire him very soon as their next manager. But
he'll land on his feet. He'll either land as I wouldn't be surprised if there were more managerial openings other than just the 2 that we've got right now. I know baseball. It's actually interesting that the Cardinals did make the move, although they didn't officially announce it. It's just news that broke. Similar to the Cubs GM search. Baseball always says, "Hey, we'd like you to not break any news during the playoffs." Which honestly makes no sense. To me, it's an off day. Baseball should be breaking news, not today, but yesterday. They should have been breaking news. Baseball has no idea how to market the game. They're just terrible at it. But that's a whole different conversation. I think Shilt's going to land on his feet. If he doesn't get a job on a bench somewhere, I could very easily see him landing a job as a special assistant to a GM somewhere. Maybe a GM that, a lot of the GMs now are, really, really smart, Ivy League educated guys that maybe didn't play the game of baseball. And so a guy like Mike Shildt would be a really good guy to have because he can help kind of talk through the inner workings of a clubhouse, especially like a younger GM or at least a GM new to the game. So not new to the game, but I'm sorry, new to the role. So he'll land on his feet. He'll do well. He'll be back on a bench, I would say, in the next year or 2.
Yeah, and I think it is kind of weird how baseball doesn't like for news to be broke during the playoffs, even though the NFL and I think the NFL and the NBA do this all the time. And I just think that, especially during free agency, it takes so long, and sometimes players won't sign until right before spring training starts, or even in spring training they'll go out and sign with the team. It's just really weird how the MLB does that, and I think that hurts the game in my opinion. But I mean, you can't really do anything at the moment. I just think the MLB definitely needs to think about possibly, marketing it better and stuff like that. But speaking of the Padres opening position, they, of course, let Jace Tingler go. Who do you think first of all, were you shocked that the Padres let Jace Tingler go?
No, not at all. The way that season ended, as good as that team is, the talent that team has, I understand that they were in a tough division with 2 teams that won more than 100 games. But they didn't play to their potential. A number of guys played well below what they should have played. It was a rough season. I've got a number of friends out in San Diego that are Padres fans. I felt for them. That to me, that's a very likable team. You've got, I love you, Darvish, Fernando Tatis. Manny Machado's a polarizing figure, but I like Manny Machado. They just got a bunch of guys that I like. And I think that team with the right manager is a 100-win team. They didn't play like it this year, obviously. They finished well below expectations. My personal choice, I would love to see Ron Washington. I'd love to see him get another shot. I think he's done great things with the Braves in his time there. I thought he did a really nice job with the Rangers when he was there. He was he played base. He helped the Rangers play baseball in October, and if you haven't noticed, they haven't been back since he's been gone. Mm-hmm. So I'm a Ron Washington fan. I watch a lot of YouTube videos of baseball drills. I'm a total baseball nerd, man. And Ron Washington has a number of them out there. The Braves TV, where their TV station is out down there in Atlanta, will film these sessions of him running guys through drills. And I love the way he interacts with the players. The players have to love him. And the guy is just an absolute wealth of knowledge. So for me, it's Ron Washington or bust in San Diego.
Yeah, and I think when they hired Jace Tingler, and of course I think Andy Preller, the GM, was saying that he wanted to hire someone with experience. But at the same time, if you go out and hire, his guys that he hired were Andy Green and Andy Preller and Jace Tingler, which they're not. I think they were both first-time managers. So it kind of felt like Andy Preller was trying to hire guys that were yes men, that he could control the team. That's what I kind of felt. But if they hired a guy like Ron Washington, that'd make a lot of sense. What about a guy like Bruce Bochy? Maybe he'd come back to manage the Padres?
Yeah, it's possible he could come back, but I don't know. If I'm Bochy, he's accomplished so much in the game. It would be kind of cool to see him come back. And I think if he did come back, he would be very successful. He's a guy that has had success wherever he's gone. But if I'm Bochy, just enjoy retirement and, spend time with the family and do your thing. But you know how it is, man. These guys can never really get away from the game. Tony La Russa is a classic example. The guy's like 120 years old, and he's still coming back. And forgetting rules, by the way, was a very, very anti-hiring Tony. It was very against the hiring of Tony La Russa with the White Sox, but I guess the alternative was A.J. Hinch. So maybe they did okay.
I don't know the whole thing about the White Sox situation. I know when they hired Tony La Russa, there were so many people up in arms, but they still made the playoffs. And they took the Astros to 4 games, and the Astros are solid, but I never really had a problem. And maybe I'm biased towards Tony La Russa because he managed the Cardinals for so long. But yeah, talking about Bruce Bochy, he was very successful. I think I think he had a winning record with the Padres, so he was really successful there. And of course, he won 3 World Series with the Dodgers. So I can understand what you're saying. Just kind of, just enjoy retirement. But I don't know. I think that if the Padres hire Bruce Bochy, they would be back to being what they were. And, of course, their pitching wasn't great. That was kind of the downside. And, of course, they couldn't make the trade for Max Scherzer, which I think ultimately really hurt them. But I just think that if they hired a guy like Bruce Bochy, and even if they hired a guy like Mike Schilt, who is now available, that would be a solid hire. So just someone with managerial experience. Did you have anything else to add to that?
I would say any of the 3 names we've mentioned, Bochy, Schilt, or Ron Washington, would all be upgrades, I think, over Jace Tingler. I think all would challenge Preller, which I think is what he needs. There was an article written in The Athletic a couple weeks ago. The Padres have some issues, and one of the issues is he likes yes men. The one thing I'll say about Tony La Russa is La Russa was hired to fix a mistake made in 1983. 1983. So the White Sox had a good season. Hawk Harrelson, you may know the name Hawk Harrelson, retired color commentator for the White Sox. Retired play-by-play member for the White Sox, was the GM of the White Sox for a period of time. And he fired Tony La Russa. And then he was then fired and then brought up back into the broadcast booth. But La Russa and Jerry Reinsdorf are close friends. And I think Reinsdorf took over the coaching search from Rick Hahn and said, listen, we're bringing my guy in. And I don't think Hahn was on board. It was pretty clear in their opening press conferences that Hahn was not on board. I think he did his best to try and sell it. By the end of the season, though, by the time they got to the playoffs, even the biggest Tony La Russa skeptics, myself included, were okay with the move. Hahn seemed to be okay with the move as well. And, I think at the end of the season, La Russa did okay. That team lost because of deficiencies, not because of Tony La Russa, and also because Houston just absolutely hit the heck out of the ball when they played.
And it feels like everybody always tries to. I think people are waiting for the collapse of the Astros, and it's not happening. Like people, I think, thought the Astros were going to take a massive step back this year, and yet they were still the number 2 seed in the American League, and right now they're in the ALCS. So I feel like people don't give the Astros enough credit. And what have you thought about the Astros season overall? Do you think they have a chance to maybe play in the World Series versus maybe the Dodgers? Of course, the Dodgers could be eliminated by the time we get this recording done. But what did you think about the Astros overall season?
Yeah, so the Astros had been interesting. Here's my thing with Major League Baseball. The regular season and the playoffs are two very different. It's obviously the same sport, but it's so very different. You could have a team full of boppers and hit all kinds of home runs and fill up the stat book and look like gods during the regular season. You could have, Joey Gallo, Anthony Rizzo, Giancarlo Stanton, and Aaron Judge. But guess what happens in October? Those guys get struck out a lot. And what the Astros don't do is strike out. They put the ball in play. And there's a theme. If you go look at the box scores of every game so far in the playoffs, the teams that are winning and the teams that have advanced put the ball in play, they don't strike out, and they strike out their opponent. And the Astros are no different. The White Sox couldn't hit quite as well as the Astros, and the Astros they put the ball in play. If you look at guys like Carlos Correa had an at-bat in Game 4 with the bases loaded. I think La Russa made the mistake here by leaving Rodon in the game too long. Clearly he was laboring. He couldn't get anything over except for his fastball. He had just struck out Gurriel on a high fastball. Correa comes up, and actually after the game said this. He said, I knew he was going to throw me a fastball high, and I knew it was going to come in hard. So I sat and waited for it with 2 strikes. And what did he do? He put it off the left field wall, one hop the left field wall, 2 runs scored, and they never looked back, and they dominated the game, won 10-1. But what's interesting is the Astros, those guys, and the Red Sox do it really well. They go up to the plate and they do what's needed in the moment. So if I need to go up there and I need to hit one opposite field into the gap, that's what I'm swinging for. In the regular season, you get a lot of guys that go up there and they're looking to hit the ball 5 miles. And then when you do that all regular season and you come into the playoffs, it's hard to adjust from being the guy who just swings out of your socks to the guy who's looking to slap the ball in the opposite field. And those teams do that throughout the course of the season, and that's why they're successful when it comes to October. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you surprised the Red Sox beat the Rays, and are you surprised that the Red Sox are currently in the ALCS?
I don't want to say surprised. If you asked me before the series, I would have picked the Rays to win.
Yeah.
But if you go back and look at the numbers, the Red Sox struck out only 3 times in Game 4. They hit over 300 in the series as a team. They put the ball in play. They hit 444 in Game 4. Tampa Bay struck out 20 times in Game 3. So it goes back to what I said earlier. The team that strikes out the least and puts the ball in play the most wins. If you're not striking out, an out where you put the ball in play is far more productive than an out where you strike out. And when the Red Sox would get out, they would put the ball in play. And generally what happens is you're putting pressure on the defense. You're allowing guys to advance. If there's a guy on second base, you hit a ground ball, he's going to go to third. If you hit a a pop fly he's going to sacrifice over. And those teams are good at it. The Red Sox are good at it. The Rays did a poor job of getting guys on base. And when you don't get guys on base, a home run is one run. The Red Sox would get guys on base and hit a home run, and 2 or 3 guys would score. And that was the difference in the game, or in the series.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think before the season or before the playoffs begin, I thought the Rays would be the top team, or they were the top team in the AL, but I thought they were going to go to the World Series and maybe get a revenge from last year. But, I mean, what have you thought about the whole Rays situation? As you know, they're still one of the best teams in the league, yet they have one of the worst fan attendance. Do you think there's ever a chance where the Rays will finally move out of Tampa and maybe go to Montreal or somewhere like that?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly can't imagine a scenario that they stay in Tampa. I don't know why the city would build a stadium there. And there's things I've read where, you know, the ballpark is really not in Tampa. It's hard to get to. I don't know. Whatever the case is, Florida, although a baseball hotbed, has 2 major league teams, and the attendance in both of those parks are awful. Montreal sounds romantic. I love the idea of it. I love the Expos, right? The whatever that logo, the Florida leaf. I don't know how to say it. Whatever. You know what the logo was, right? I have it actually right there on my wall somewhere. I don't know. It's over there. Yeah, right there. Sorry. But my point is, the reason the Nationals or the Expos are now the Nationals is because the Montreal Expos home games looked like Tampa Bay Rays home games. There were 18 guys out playing on the field, and there was probably 18 people in the stands. And I get it, they had an old, out-of-date stadium. But, I mean, other teams had old, out-of-date stadiums they filled up too when the team was good. And in the mid-'90s, that Expos team was good, and they weren't filling the stands. So I don't know if baseball in Montreal makes sense. I think the notion of splitting the season between the Rays and the Expos does one of 2 things. Either if you actually do it, they're just testing out to see if Montreal can draw. If it does, maybe they give them another shot. My actual thought process there is it's not really a real thing. It's a negotiating ploy, not with Tampa Bay to see if they'll get them to build a stadium, but with it's all about the collective bargaining agreement. And when they all get together to negotiate, if Major League Baseball, the owners are saying, hey, we're going to do this thing where they play half in Montreal and half in Tampa Bay, whether real or not, it's something that when Major League, the players union says, hey, you know, we want this, Major League Baseball they have a tactic they can use, or they have a chip they can play. Like the owners might say, hey, we want you to get rid of this, or we want you to do that. And the players are like, no, we're not doing that. And they'll be like, I tell you what, we won't do the split thing. We'll keep them in Tampa if you do this. And then the players are like, oh, okay. So they create like this fake thing to then be used as a bargaining chip. So that's actually what I think is happening. But that's just a theory. I may be wrong.
Yeah, and I know it seems like, and this is, it seems like the A's are moving over to Las Vegas sooner. It seems like they're going to be out of Oakland soon. I did hear a report, this might have been about a year ago, that Memphis really wanted a baseball team. Do you think if Tampa Bay was able, or if they were able to move, do you think Memphis would make some sense? Or what do you think about the whole city of Memphis?
Yeah, so if you're going to go to Tennessee, Memphis is not the city I would pick. It's Nashville. I think Nashville's probably somewhere in the top 4. I think your 4 choices, if you're gonna leave, or you're gonna Charlotte, that's probably number 4. Number 3 is probably Portland, and then I think you've got Nashville and Montreal somewhere. So I think you've got Nashville, Montreal, Portland, and Charlotte, and then of course Vegas, because Vegas is just stealing everything from Oakland. Pretty soon they're going to take Too Short and MC Hammer with them too. But yeah, I think Portland, actually, to me, I love the idea of Portland as a team because, one, I had the Portland Diamond Project, which is the group that is working to bring that team. Russell Wilson is a part of that group, trying to bring a team to Portland. They've got the area that they want to build the stadium. They've got renderings of what it looks like. It looks amazing. Boats can actually dock at the ballpark and get out and watch the game. I mean, it's a really cool concept. I also like the idea of Montreal, as long as you keep them the American League East. Because then you'd have Montreal and the Toronto Blue Jays in the same country, in the same division. That could be really interesting from a rivalry standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah, and Portland, I always forget about Portland, but it seems like they're trying to get any type of professional sports team out there. I know they have the Trailblazers and they have the Portland Timbers, but they don't have – I think they've been trying to get an NFL team for a while. They've been trying to get an MLB team. I didn't think about them. Charlotte makes a lot of sense. I think another city, maybe Indianapolis, maybe. Of course, Louisville would probably be a big place too, but unfortunately they're right next to Cincinnati, so the Reds would probably make a stink about it. But – yeah, that would make a lot of sense. I just heard the report about Memphis possibly, and the Rays are just such a good team, but yet they have no fans, and I think it's just because Florida just seems like it's not much of a baseball town, I guess. It's more of a football or basketball. It's not really a baseball town, but, I mean, we'll end up seeing what happens. Yeah, exactly.
College baseball fills up. Florida State, they don't mess around. They fill that park up. That's a wild, crazy environment. Some of the guys I've interviewed that play in the ACC have told me Florida State is a wild place to play. You don't hear people saying that about playing in Tampa.
Yeah, I just think, and plus the stadium, it doesn't seem like you mentioned the stadium's not very good. I think they built that stadium in 1992, and they didn't get a team until 1997, so it was empty for like 5 years.
You know why they built?
Which doesn't make any sense either.
You know,
but
that stadium was built because the White Sox were threatening to move there.
Okay.
And
I did not know anything about that.
And then they got Chicago to build the new Comiskey Park, and they built a cookie-cutter stadium. It was the last of that breed of stadiums. And then the next stadium built after that was Camden Yards, which is really Camden Yards began the movement of building these beautiful architectural kind of old school meets new school ballparks, which now they all look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting how that works out, and I actually didn't know anything about that, so I guess that makes more sense. So we go back to the postseason, and again, we're kind of running out of time here, but what player has impressed you the most this postseason?
You know, there's a couple guys that have impressed me, and none of these names are names that anyone's going to be surprised by, but I would say that I've got a list of guys. Luis Robert, the White Sox, had an incredible series, hit 467. His OPS was over 1,000. I think he is going to be the next big star in Major League Baseball. For the next 10 years, that guy will be like, I don't know if he's going to be Mike Trout good, but he's a star. He's a future MVP. Chris Bryant has had an incredible postseason so far. He has matched his home run totals from 2017 to 2020 postseason. I say that partly in jest because he was awful with the Cubs in the postseason at the plate after 2016, which is part of the reason why the Cubs broke it all up this year, because all of those core guys were terrible at the plate. His one home run was in a garbage time blowout loss to the Dodgers. In a game that I was at in 2017, they lost like 15-2. It was a clincher. So I got to see a team clinch to go to the World Series. It was just the team that I was going to see my team play. So that kind of sucked. Bryant, Robert, Kike Hernandez is probably the biggest surprise of the group. Carlos Correa is another one, but Kike has been amazing. Timely hits. He's hitting 435 in the playoffs. And then I can't go without mentioning my guy, Wander Franco. He's got everything about him. He's cool. He plays hard. He's a good ball player. He's put up some really nice numbers. The thing I think I loved about him the most has nothing to do with his play, but the yellow batting gloves and the elbow pad and the shoes, man, that's a look. That's a good look. It pops. It looks great on TV.
Yeah, and that's funny that you mentioned that. But and again, thanks again for coming on, Chris. It's been a great talk. But One thing that I've always kind of wanted to talk more about is, should the MLB expand the playoffs? Like, should they add another team? I know they did that in 2020 because of the COVID, because of the pandemic. But do you think the MLB needs to add at least one more team to basically to make it like, do you think they need to add 6 teams in each league, or do they need to go 8, or do you like the way it is?
I mean, I like the way it is. I think if you look at the standings, and you go one more team down in the National League, I think it would have been Cincinnati. And Cincinnati, to me, was not a playoff team. They would have gotten absolutely throttled in the playoffs. They've got Nick Castellanos and Joey Votto. It would have been fun to see those guys play at least one game, maybe a 3-game series in the playoffs. But I don't, where I think it hurts is you look at the American League, I would have loved to have seen Seattle and Toronto make the playoffs, probably more so than the Yankees or the Red Sox. The Red Sox are obviously proving their worth. But no, I think where it's at right now is great. You get one team from each division, and then you get 2 wild card teams. This year was an absolute anomaly in terms of how well the AL East performed to have 4 teams over 90 wins. But I think normally 5 is it. There's sometimes where you look at a wild card game and you've got 2 teams that one of those teams really barely deserves it. So I think they're at the sweet spot with 10 teams. So no, I don't think. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yes, I do have some thoughts about that. Now, I thought last year there was too many teams. I understand you wanted to get more games, but having 16 teams altogether is too much. Like, I'm not a huge fan of the way the NBA does it, where there's more teams making it than not making it. I know the NFL recently expanded. And, of course, the NBA doesn't really have a choice sometimes because 7 teams doesn't really make any sense. And I think 6 teams is not enough for each conference. But I think the MLB needs to add one more team in each league. And then instead of doing a wild card game, they should have the 1 or 2 seeds the top 2 seeds get a bye, and the 3 and 6 and the 4 and 5 play a 2 out of 3 game series. And then the winner of let's say the 2 and 3, and then they go on to, after the 6, they go to the 3 or 4. I think the 1 seed plays the 4 and 2 and the 3, something like that. Or they could just have the 1 seed play the 6, the 2 play the 5, and 3 play the 4, and do a 2 out of 3. I think that's more fair, and I think that also makes it more interesting. That's just my take. And maybe, especially with how good the American League East, as you were talking about, I thought, like I said, the Mariners and the Blue Jays and all those teams deserve to make it. Of course, one of those teams would have still missed it, but I thought that would make the most sense. But I don't know. I just think that the MLB needs to at least put one more team in each league. I think 5 is just not quite enough. So
yeah, and I think one thing I would say, in my mind, you keep the 5, but if you went to 6, I wouldn't be offended by it. It wouldn't hurt. I mean, it's never bad to see one extra team make it, because that just means we've got more games to watch in October. But I would like to see them, if you have 2 wild card or 3 wild card teams, start the playoffs, but seed the teams like you mentioned, 1 through 6. Don't automatically give don't put the 2 wild card teams in a wild card game, because the Dodgers end up in a wild card game, yet they've got the 2nd best record in baseball. And then, if they were to advance to play Atlanta gets the home field advantage. And I don't remember how many wins Atlanta has, but I think Atlanta probably finished 12 or 13 games behind the Dodgers. So they don't deserve to host it, because they played in an absolute garbage division in the NL East.
Yeah, they could do, the NBA does this, where they just do the best teams get the top overall seeds, and that meant the Dodgers, instead of getting a 4 seed, they would get a 2 seed.
Exactly.
I wouldn't mind that either, just getting rid of But then you wouldn't really need divisions, and I guess divisions would be more of just bragging rights and to put one more banner in your stadium or whatever. But I don't know. That wouldn't be a bad idea. But yeah, the Dodgers definitely deserve to have more than just a wild card game. Of course, I'm a Cardinals fan. I was just disappointed the way our season ended, but I don't know. We'll see. I just think the MLB needs to do something, needs to expand at least once. I think the wild card game is great and everything. I just think they need to expand at least one more team. And then, of course, I can kind of wonder this, and there's so many people who have so many different opinions about this, but who do you think right now is the NL MVP? Is it Juan Soto? Is it Is it Bryce Harper? Who do you think the NL MVP is?
So here's what baseball should do. They have a guy who had one of the best seasons, maybe one of the best seasons of all time. And he's going to finish second in the American League because the guy that's going to win it had an incredible season offensively and had an incredible season pitching. Mm-hmm. Hasn't been done since, Babe Ruth. So Shohei Ohtani is obviously going to win the American League. Just give the NL MVP to Vlad Guerrero Jr. Like, don't even screw around. Just give it to him. He's a badass. He deserves it. It's unfortunate that he's going to have this great season and finish second. But to really answer your question, it's a coin flip between Soto and Harper. Mm-hmm. I'm a bigger Juan Soto fan, so I'm going to give it to Juan Soto. I think he's just there's something. So I went to a Nationals game in DC, actually the day of the trade deadline, where the Cubs and Nationals combined to trade like 10 players. And so I got to see Soto play there. And then I went to the a Rockies game in Colorado a week and a half ago. And I'll tell you, I went to a lot of baseball games this year, and I think I probably saw 5 or 6 different ballparks around the country. And the most impressive thing I saw was, I don't know why, Juan Soto working a full count and taking a walk it's artwork. The guy takes a ball an inch off the plate and does it with confidence because he knows it's a ball. The guy's like 22, 23 years old, has incredible command of the strike zone. If he doesn't swing at it, it's not a strike. He's so good. I mean, I know it's not about perceived talent for the MVP. It's about who is actually the most valuable player for their team. And that team sucked, but Juan Soto's, he's my pick. Who's your pick?
To be honest with you, the AL MVP was pretty much a walk in the park. Ohtani, with what a season he had. And of course, Guerrero's going to have a great season as well, or had a great season as well, and he doesn't even get mentioned in there. It's just tough. I would probably say Bryce Harper, but I mean, Juan Soto's not a bad pick either. It's just interesting because all the MVP candidates on the NL side didn't even make the playoffs. Like, I thought that was really interesting the way that ended. And of course, Buster Posey had a great season, but not like an MVP type of season. So I don't know. I think you can I wouldn't be upset if Soto got it. I just think that everybody has been saying Bryce Harper lately. And for a while there, before he got injured, Jacob deGrom was considered an MVP candidate or somewhere in there. But of course, he got injured, so that kind of took him out. But I'd say Harper, but I wouldn't mind if Soto got it either. I just think the NL side, it wasn't as good as the American League. And yeah, Guerrero kind of got screwed over by this, but I mean, he still had a great season. But maybe he'll end up having an MVP season next year. So, and again, thanks again for coming on. We're just going to wrap up. I got one more question for you. I've been usually every time someone who has a baseball podcast come on, I talk about World Series predictions. Who do you have in the World Series who do you have in the World Series this year?
So I have the Red Sox playing whoever wins tonight. The Giants and the Dodgers.
Okay.
I'm not very good at predicting because my World Series prediction this year, well, those teams have been eliminated already. And I think it was more wishful thinking because I was hoping the Brewers would make it. I live in Milwaukee or right outside of Milwaukee, and I was hoping to go to a World Series game. But I've got the Red Sox playing either the Dodgers or the Giants. Take your pick because either the Dodgers or the Giants would beat the Red Sox to win the World Series. My hope is the Giants. It's been too long since they've won a World Series. It's been about, 2014.
7 years.
7 years. Yeah, it's too long for any fan base to wait.
Yeah.
So I feel bad for the Giants fans that have been long suffering. So actually, of the Red Sox, the Giants, and the Dodgers, they are the most longest suffering fans at 7 years. So, no, that's not why. I love Buster Posey. Obviously, being a Cubs fan, as you can see behind me, I'd love for Chris Bryant to win a World Series. I like the Giants, man. What about you?
Yeah. Before the season started, I thought there'd possibly be another rematch of the Red Sox or the Rays and Dodgers. Of course, the Rays are out. I think, whoever wins between the Giants and Dodgers. I think the Braves are decent, but let's be honest, the NL East was not very good this year. However, the Braves did upset the Brewers, which I thought was great, but I don't think the Braves. To be honest with you, I think the Braves get beat by whoever wins tonight. And the American League, oh man, I secretly kind of want to see the Dodgers and Astros again and see how that works out. That would be fun.
Be good.
But I would probably agree with you saying the Red Sox or whoever wins tonight. But I would love to see the Dodgers and Astros. That'd be fun to watch a rematch of that. But anyways, we'll see what ends up happening. Of course, at the time of this recording, it's on Thursday night, so we don't know yet who the Giants or the Dodgers win. So, again, thanks for coming on, Chris. And if there's anything else you want to add before we end the interview,
I will. So, anyone listening to this, if you've made it this far, if I haven't turned you off, find me on Twitter at TurnApairChris. And there's some big news coming very, very soon. I can't break it. It would be very bad if I broke the news, but we've done a lot of really cool things on the podcast. Like I said, I've interviewed 125 ball players, a lot of major league guys, a lot of all-star players, former AL Rookie of the Year, World Series winners. We've had a lot of guys and women on the podcast that are doing big things. What's coming soon will trump all of that. It's going to be amazing. And so that's about all I can say. But follow the Turn a Pair Baseball podcast on Twitter. We'll have all sorts of information and something really, really cool that I am giddy over what's coming. So more to come.
All right. Thanks again for coming on, Chris. To get all the links of his podcast will be down in the description below. I'll start following you on Twitter as well. So, again, thanks for coming on, Chris, and have a wonderful night and enjoy the rest of the postseason.
JJ, thanks so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. And anytime you want me to have me on again, I look forward to it.
All right. Sounds good.